Most services companies struggle with inconsistent pricing, which impacts both margins and customer trust. Today, I plan to show you how to reduce that variability using AI and CPQ frameworks in a very practical way. Hello, everyone. I'm Stavan, co founder and CEO of Provus, and I'm joined by Paul Jackatis. A quick note before we start, please drop your questions in the chat window and we'll address as many as we can. The session is being recorded and we'll share it with you afterwards. Now, pricing variability isn't usually intentional. It comes from inconsistent decision making. Different teams rely on judgment or incomplete data. So, similar deals end up being priced very, very differently. And that's where the real problem starts. Joining me today is Paul Jackatis, a 30-year veteran in the technology services space with deep experience in go to market strategy, pricing, and CPQ transformations. Paul, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Darwin. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I'm Paul Jackatis. Like Darwin said, I've kind of spent my whole life in professional services, primarily from an IT consulting standpoint. Started off as a billable consultant in the field serving clients, but then transitioned into a sales role because I really like that kind of that client interaction, the sales motion, and helping firms grow. And so I went from just a sales guy to eventually me and a couple of partners started up our own firm, which we grew over the course of a decade to over 1,000 folks, and I ran all the sales for that. And then, I've worked, I've had a good luck of working for lots of different types of professional services firms. Like I said, a startup, a couple turnarounds of smaller firms, a reorganization of a mid firm. I've worked through some M&A type situations, all the way up to spending some years with Accenture and one of the big four. So from the biggest of the world to the two guys and a dog in a garage. So I love learning about sales best practices, client relationships, and now that's kind of morphed into doing a lot of sales operational consulting. So I've implemented CRM systems of multiple kinds. I've implemented CPQ solutions of many times, worked through sales process and training and sales models. And I find that fascinating because I think sometimes that in our industry, that is not taken as seriously as maybe some other industries have.
Fantastic, Paul. And it's a pleasure to have you. And what better person to ask because of your varied background? Like, what is pricing really? And how will you help defining what does good pricing mean? Because a lot of people have different definitions of it, and it's always a confusing topic.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you for starting there because you'd be surprised how many different answers you would get when you ask, somebody in our industry what is pricing. And pricing really, because one group may take a very strategic view of it all, like it's one of the four P's of marketing, right? It's pretty fundamental to a business.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there's firms that think, well, pricing is just kind of what we do tactically to get a proposal out the door. And so those two philosophies, and trust me, I've seen this at some of the largest firms out there, where they think if they think tactically, they think pricing is something you do kind of at the end of a proposal cycle, where you got to come up with, some resource model, you've got to come up with hours, you've got to come up with the whole effort, and you do it in some kind of spreadsheet somewhere. So you may have a CRM system, but this is typically done on some spreadsheet or some tool that's was proprietary to that group. And it turns out to be a cost plus model, right? So how many people do we need? How many hours do we need? What skills do we need? What's that going to cost? Let's add a margin to it. That's our price. Let's think about any negotiation or discounting that we might do ahead of time because procurement's going to do that for us. And so it's done very late in the game. And one of the things that I've always advocated is pricing really begins when even before you say hello to the client. At the very beginning of the sales cycle, I have seen pricing being influenced so significantly based on the client's perception of your brand, who you are, what you offer, your value proposition, and so many other things. So the strategic side of pricing is where you really start to look at what's the client willing to pay based on their perception of value. And that could range radically depending on the situation that client's in. So it's not one size fits all. And so therefore that ends up becoming and also what's the perception of the marketplace? What's going on in the dynamics of the economy, of the marketplace, the competition set. And out of that, the client has a kind of a formed notion of what pricing should be. And so the consulting firm needs to think of where do we want to play in the marketplace. So that's the go-to-market thing Stowen mentioned, right? You got to know who you are and then align your pricing to your value proposition. And then you got to push that through the rest of your organization, which most companies do that front end exercise, but there's a big disconnect because operationally they still do it the old way. So pricing is kind of you got to look at both. You need both. It's not one is right, one is wrong. It's both.
Correct. Hmm. No, no, very interesting. So again, and you would have seen it in many firms. I have seen it at people who I talk to regularly on a regular basis. We have similar engagements, but two individuals come up with completely different pricings, right? One with a very, very high margin, because in services, as you know, margin is the most important factor. Someone factors it at 50% margin and somebody comes with a 20% margin. Is this Where does this gap actually come from? Is this a real gap, or is it just individuals at play?
It's a real gap, and it is often too often left to individuals. Um, and that's kind of where the problem begins. There is no North Star for what does good pricing look like. What should it be? There's limited benchmarks. There's tribal knowledge. So one practice within a large professional services firm might think that they may overvalue what they deliver, or they may undervalue what they deliver. And the sales team then also oftentimes talks about their marketplace, their territory, their accounts as unique. And
Yeah,
so you have this client situation that's unique. You've got this company that is different from every other company theoretically, and this project is custom. So everything is, bespoke. And because of that, you hear things like, yeah, if you think that's pricing, that's not going to fly in my marketplace. I'm a
yeah,
secondary
correct,
market.
correct.
Or, oh, that'll never work in my client, because
Right.
they got a procurement team and we've got an MSA and we're limited in what we can do. There are other companies that think, you know what, just price to win and we'll figure it out later. So the burden gets pushed down to delivery. And so while you might have a target margin in mind and then you negotiate and discount and do other things, you remove resources that you really are essential. You take out time frame lines into the project and you put the project at risk. And that just flows down to delivery. And at the end of delivery, after you've, build the client, you end up with the final, your year-end grade card. And oftentimes
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
surprises, and the CFOs and the financial teams are like, "What are we doing out in the field?" And that's because again, there's a lack of definition of what good pricing looks like that is aligned to your go-to-market strategy.
Uh, but again, I think most companies I have seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, but again, I think what happens is the blame tends to go to the sales folks. Like, okay, oh, the sales folks are just discounting. Let's train them better so that they don't discount. Do you think that's the real problem, or is there a strategy issue over here in terms of how companies have actually got everybody onto the same page, or
Well,
in terms of
yeah, there's a
pricing?
lot of things you need in order to get people on the same page, and but it is so. What you're describing is it's the salesperson, it's the sales team, it's the business unit lead, it's the
Correct.
delivery folks. It's hey, a practice may say, hey, I'm a little bit soft on utilization, so let's just kind of get these people billable somewhere. So you have a whole lot of dynamics, but the thing is, it's not systemic. That's the problem, right? You never know what you're going to get. So forecasting in our industry has always been challenging. And that's where I think there's an opportunity with, like you introduced early on, CPQ, AI, and other governance. I mean, a lot of it is just getting your governance right, defining your data elements so they all align, so that there's a kind of a one source of truth within the business. And then if it's aligned, then you're starting to see patterns, you're starting to see trends, and then you could train, and then you could, improve the robustness of your delivery approach or your sales tool set or how you market that service. Now you have intelligence to work on. You have a win-loss report that's meaningful. You could actually trace, oh, gee, the last 6 times we did this, we lost five
Yep.
times. Or
Yep.
the last 8 times we've done this, we've won 8 times. Neither are actually good. I often say, what's your win-loss rate in your firm and what's your goal? Oh, we want to win every deal. It's like, well, that's not a good idea. Even if you say we need to win 80% of our deals, that's not a good idea because that means you're going to discount and do whatever it takes and to win the deal. But then again, if you're under 50%, then maybe you have something broken that's otherwise chasing the wrong deals or proposing in the wrong way or pricing it in a manner that's and it's not and pricing, by the way, is not just the final sticker. It's the pricing model. How are you presenting the offer? So think of the whole motion of presenting an offer. Are you going to do this in stages? Are you going to do this in fixed fee, or are you going to do outcome based, or is there a subscription model? Clients like to buy certain things in different ways, and they appreciate when you come up with options. We use the
Yeah.
word optionality. Give the client options. So many
Yeah.
studies have shown that, and one was like some subscription company that said, it was like an online versus digital media, right? And they said, hey, online is $79 a month. Offline, if you want the kind of the hard copy of the
Yeah.
media, then that's $119. If you want both, it's also $119, right? So by giving them options, it shifted the buying behavior
Correct.
significantly. So that's
Correct.
all part of pricing too, because those
Yeah.
models all need their own kind of bundles and pricing, and it's got to be sold in that manner along the way. It's not something you want to do at the end. Oh yeah,
Correct.
we gave you a time and materials bid. Oh, okay, I guess we could fix fee it. Right? But I'm gonna have to charge you more. And the client, no, I want you to fix
Good.
fee your time and materials bid. Not a good position to get yourself stuck in.
So, so when we were planning and we were preparing for this webinar, right? What one thing which stuck to me was what you call a three-way match as the baseline. Can you can you clarify and talk about it? Because I think that will be really valuable to our listeners, right? Because
Yeah.
you talked about something which you have formed as a strategy, right? Like working across
Yes,
companies, right?
so this is the fascinating part about a lot of firms is the financials that come out the back end. When you close the books on an engagement, on an account, you close your quarter, and then you run your margin analysis at either the opportunity project code level or at the account level or at the business unit level. Those numbers are often very unreliable. People doubt them. They question them. They don't believe that that's really where they landed because it doesn't match kind of what they were tracking at the project. It doesn't match what they think they sold. So the notion of a three-way match is having integrity from the very beginning, which is basically your proposal.
Okay.
What are you? A lot of companies when they look at all these margins. What did we actually sell to that client? Short of digging up a proposal off of some share drive somewhere and trying to dig up emailing people for the estimation worksheet that they use to come up with that proposal, they really don't know what you sold. I mean, there's lacking of definition around that, and it's not captured in a system. Not only that, but then that's the one part of the match is to lock down your services catalog, get that taxonomy right, and make sure that that taxonomy is suitable all the way through to how you track financials, to your chart of
Correct.
accounts and so on. So that takes kind of an alignment from the beginning of your org front end to your back end org. So then, therefore, when you create an opportunity, it has all the right taxonomy of the service codes and pieces and parts of that is. Then what you have is an attribute-based model that then says, okay, for these types of services within this service area, we can actually identify what it is we're going to bid on. And that creates the proposal, and the plan within the proposal needs to be the way you set up the project in your billing system. Too often, well, we proposed it with 30% offshore and this much load on project management and this much but by the time you actually execute the project, maybe things have changed. You don't have those people available that you're hoping to. Your cost model may have changed, so you're going to change the mix of what it or change the naming of the deliverables. So now what was sold and what was set up in your billing system and time tracking systems don't match.
Correct.
And then there's change orders and other things that happen along the way as well. So by the time you get to the end of the project, then all of that needs to be billed to the client, oftentimes in a model that's consumable in their language. So people
Right.
change the billing nomenclature yet again, and then all of it has to end up in financials. So the notion of a three-way match is if you had service codes that are consistent from how you sell it, how you project manage delivery basically into your financials. Now those numbers at the tail end, you can really do reliable analysis on margin performance.
And where do you think this is broken? First and foremost, with your experience across various companies, you would have seen it many places where this is broken, right? So which area is it broken the most? Because you talked about these three different areas, right? Where do you think it is broken the most?
Yeah, I think it's well, I mean, the financial systems are usually, pretty robust and you've got accountants and so on but it's not aligned. So but that should be an easy thing to fix. Of course it messes up your historical data, but at some point you gotta start clean.
Correct.
I think it's
Correct.
most broken based on the fact that when the sales process is moving through proposaling, they are doing anything they can to appeal to the client. So they're not following the guidelines. Things weren't predefined, so they're just kind of doing it on the fly. It's all custom, and it's based on that individual. I like to call it an architectural schema. Oh well, no, we as a firm we call it this, right? So just those types of cleaning that up is very important. And then the broken part is oftentimes that there is no system for that. CRM
Okay.
doesn't do that. CRM doesn't do any of that. They create an opportunity and you put a dollar value on it and some high level data, but those systems are not meant to be your, building up of your price and what are you actually going to provide to the client. So that middle part is done offline,
Hmm.
oftentimes on spreadsheets or proprietary little systems, and it's all very siloed. And
Correct.
so that's the main part that I think is the opportunity to 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 implement. And it's not an extension of a CRM system. It is a quoting and pricing tool. Actually configuring quoting and pricing is critically important. The configuration part, move it online so you capture all that data and make it consistent across your services taxonomy.
No, no, I think this is music to my ears because this is exactly where CPQ comes into the picture, right? But what is happening today? There is a confusion in terms of what is CPQ's role in the current economy, right? The AI economy, which everybody talks about, right? And everything is AI, right? What do you think about CPQ and AI? Do they
Yeah.
exist together or they are independent and they have to exist together?
I think it's a match made in heaven because uh, CPQ is the platform that you can get the data that you need, that AI will consume. It'll get you to the ultimate goal of AI, at least in our industry. Well, there's two goals. One is pricing optimization. Think of a
Okay.
pricing recommendation engine that based
Yeah.
on all the attributes and all the things that you fed in based on that opportunity, it can look at all the historical data. It can look inside, outside your organization. It can provide all kinds of different thought elements. If you think of how do I come up with a price, all the things that go through your head, the client's willingness to pay, the client risk, the risk of the project, the governance. Is change management going to be easy or hard here? Have we ever done this project before? Is it a new client, old client? Is it an industry we're highly desiring or not? So all of these elements influence the price, and AI is perfect. So you captured in CPQ, but AI consumes it and now starts to get smart, right? In the meantime, AI can also provide efficiencies along the way. I mean, there's the notion of guided selling. Guided selling is again moving all of the normal things you would do offline as a salesperson and a kind of pre-sales team, right? All the workshops, the questions and answers and
Yeah.
scoping and asking the client all these different things and all of that guided selling can be supported by an AI-based
Yeah.
dialogue, basically.
Yeah.
And it captures all that information and it knows what the follow-on question should be based on prior question. It's a wonderful way to help guide individuals that, maybe not have sold this much, or I'm new to the company. I need help. I don't know this stuff. I know. So that is two areas where AI really, really helps. And CPQ just really becomes the anchor for how you execute on the client and capture structured, reliable data relative to everything that influences that proposal and that price.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, I think AI is forget about replacing. It is now going to enhance like what sellers are going to be able to do and how they are going to be able to do it and the ease at which they're going to be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's all
so
about confidence factor too. A lot of folks, they have an opportunity, they're trying to figure out where do we stand, where, what works, like
correct,
there's
correct.
other people in our firm on the other coast from me that apparently have sold this. I may or may not know them. I may not have access to them, or they might have their own opinion. So it kind of takes all of the experiential results of all of your good sellers and maybe some of the, the ones that didn't turn out so well, and then is able to synergize all that information. And what most salespeople want to know is like, okay, well, if you price it at this dollar amount, at this margin, under this this pricing method, fixed fee or whatever, you have you have a 74% chance of win. Now
Correct.
that's very powerful. And then, the salesperson go, okay, all right, is that good? Or do I need to try to, what can I do to move that to 80% chance of win?
Correct.
And
Correct.
you may
Correct.
not want to say, well, I'm willing to go down to 65% chance of win. Anything over 50 means you're the lead dog in that
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the power of it that helps guide salespeople to have confidence. I've seen, especially in firms that have like a partner model or they have, industry guys trying to do the sales, some people that aren't maybe spend enough time in negotiation and negotiation training and dealing with kind of executives and procurement and all the people that trying to get the best deal. They just lack confidence. They don't know. So they just kind of take the easy path and discount. Um, but the AI tool can give them the ammunition to say, well, here are the 17 fact items that is driving why we are going to deliver this type of value to you. We've done it before. Here's 5 case studies. We understand exactly what the deliverables are and the working model for your team and our team to work together is, and here's 5 examples. And you can defend it. And it can be very readily provisioned to you through the AI interface. So that the notion of confidence to hold your ground, to ask for the right price is gold for
Yeah.
uh, for sales as well as management and folks that are doing the approval process. Some people when they're the approval workflows, typically most companies will have, well, we have a rate card and you shouldn't deviate too much from that. Although they do, because there's MSAs and other volume discounts and all this other kind of stuff that muddies the water. Um, and there's a margin threshold typically, most every
Yeah.
firm, right? I mean, if you go
Yeah.
below 41%, it's got to go through a different workflow. Your sales manager
Yep.
or your
Yep.
business
Yep.
unit head cannot approve it. It's got to go to a deal desk, and we're going to scrutinize that deal. The problem is, without a CPQ piece in the middle and the AI history, you're approving a little bit like,
Yeah.
kind of into the
Yeah.
wind, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Does the salesperson, is he honest? Is he really telling, are we not going to end up with a worse margin than this is already? But they also have the data around, again, what's the intent of the account? I think that's a piece that is missing an awful lot. Why are we doing business with this company? Is this a part of our go-to-market strategy? We're trying to penetrate this industry or this vertical, and they're a key high target for us? Or is this a legacy account that has been underperforming for the last 7 years? And yet here's
Correct.
a new opportunity, and we're just going to price it the old way. So those approvers need a little bit broader vision into kind of what's behind the scenes here and what have other people do so they can make faster decisions. So the one downside of governance and deal desks and all that from a salesperson's view is it slows things down.
Slows things
And
down.
they
Yeah.
make assumptions that you
Yeah.
think that no, 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 they don't need, their integrations are simple. No integrations are simple. It's like, it's
Yeah.
hard to get them to understand why you got to where you are. And it takes
Correct.
time. So it just takes time. And then time kills deals.
Yeah. So, it, as while we're on the AI topic, I want to really delve into deeper into because there is this whole talk that most CFOs don't like AI in their systems because they feel it's unreliable. But the reality is AI is going to be all pervasive. So, what do you think executives need to do to make themselves to be AI ready, and especially in the world of pricing?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a maturity thing.
Yeah.
Most executives, especially financial ones, they want decimal point precision and
Correct. Exactly.
accuracy and defendability behind all of that.
Right.
And until you've been operating in that structured CPQ model for years, you need to position it as the things that are coming out of AI, at least in terms of pricing optimization, is guidance. It's guidance. It puts you in a range. Here's what good looks like. Here's the historical top quadrant, middle, low. It tells you kind of where that we believe that the appropriate win-loss ratio is going to sit. And that's hard for some executives because they want more precision. But you tell them, here's the data we are capturing over time. And you could show, AI tools can show this model of confidence in the data, right? I mean, all AI
Yeah.
tools have that, based on how much, and it'll tell you based on, 10,000, transactions for, we have this level of confidence in what we're doing.
Correct. Correct.
And
Correct.
then people can see that confidence grow over time. So at least they feel like they're on the right path. Um, but yet again, it is still guidance. You still need to have a go-to-market strategy that says these are the accounts and these are the services that you need to win. And we never suggested the idea that AI will ever write your proposal for you, price it for you, go to the client, present it for you, write up the contract for you. No, it's still, largely a relationship-based business. Clients want to look you in the eye and say, "Do I trust these people?" And at some point, executives can say, "I'm going to override what AI suggests," because that's my job.
But from your vantage point and with your experience, you believe it's it's very, very relevant in these times to start utilizing AI as part of your pricing and proposal making and all that, right? Do
Yeah,
you agree?
absolutely. I mean, especially for professional services, consulting firms, and so on. I mean, this notion of optimization engines before AI really was kind of the hot button. It's been around for decades and decades, right? The
Correct.
airline industry, hotel industry, most manufacturing, CPG companies. I mean, it's not new, you know.
Correct. Correct.
Um, Now, it was a different model. They weren't large language models, they weren't other things, but they were neural networks that can synergize a lot of data and so on. So I think it's just a matter of applying those types of disciplines and history into our industry.
Correct.
And,
Correct.
and I think it's happening at a very rapid pace. I don't know any firm and one thing, another point is that most professional services firms are being hit up to AI enable their services. Forget
Yeah.
about your
Yeah.
sales
I agree.
motion. It's clients are now, hey, with AI, this should take less time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like this notion of a 30% savings because you guys use AI.
Yeah. Yep.
Even though, some firms have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in their AI enablement of what they offer in
Correct.
order
Correct.
to improve margins,
Correct.
they're not willing to pass that benefit back to the client necessarily, but they are willing to deliver
Yeah.
more value with
Yeah.
with with that tool set.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so because of the AI is core to our services and the investments we're making there, it becomes kind of logical to say we need to do that for our operation.
No, no, and I agree with you. I think it's like it's a three-way stool, right? You are using AI for your internal, development and testing and all that, all these services firms, you are selling AI. So you have to start using AI during your process of creating proposals, creating pricing, and all those good things, right? So changing a little bit of gears, we have seen a lot of companies set growth targets, and everybody sets growth targets, but a lot of them fail. And a lot of them fail because, again, coming back to our topic about pricing, right? Because pricing strategy has not been in place. Sometimes you are winning a lot of things, but it's really not at the right price and not at the right margins, and that's where they fail. And that's where we see a lot of these churn of CROs and churn of CEOs and all those things in the services. What's your take on that? And what do you think are some fundamental things that they need to put in place to actually get more closer to the targets which they set for themselves every year?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's the $1 million annual strategic planning question.
Right.
CEO and the board say, we're going to grow 15-20%, whatever it is, and then the question is, how and where. So that really starts to back up the discussion all the way to who are we? What I like to use the phrase right to win. How are we going to get into a market position where we have a very confident right to win? Um, and a lot of folks don't know that. They guess that, or they just say, okay, well, here's an AI is going to be hot, so we're going to AI enable our services, and that should do it. But they don't follow it through. They don't really re-engineer their service offerings. They don't update their services catalogs and all the pieces that need to be put in there. They may not upskill their folks enough. They don't have a parallel marketing messaging that's being evolved and influencers and alliances and things that you need in order to achieve those growth. And then fundamentally, they may have the wrong sales model.
Yeah.
I see that so often. We want, hunters. It's like, well, wait a minute, what are you guys trying to be? Oh, we want to be business advisors at this board level. Okay, well, you don't want, somebody, who is, selling commodities to be
Yeah.
the face of your firm. But likewise, you may not be able to afford, or will that super executive you hire, do they have sales instincts enough, and do they understand how to do that? So you need to put your best people in the right position. I use sports analogies all the time. You know,
Yep.
you can't have, basketball. I'm from Chicago. You see my stuff up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you can't just say, well, my strategy to grow and win is I'm going to get 5 Michael Jordans on my team.
Yeah.
That should work. Well, actually, that probably wouldn't work because they're not complementary, right? So when I say sales model, it means, okay, all the way from marketing to account segmentation, who are our targets? Do you have crystal clarity on where we should be spending our time? And by the way, this is where AI can help. And all of those dimensions need to be integrated into your CPQ and your pricing tool as well, because that'll influence. Pricing is a tool to be used. And,
Right.
and yes, you may offer discounts or investments, we like to call them, right? Where literally you say, okay, we're going to invest 500,000 into this client
Yep.
because
Uh,
it's the right services, it's the right industry, it's the right everything. So, and that becomes a conscious decision. But most firms, that's offline, that's kind of done, without any kind of real structure, if you will.
yeah.
So the strategic planning, where do we need to be? Is our sales model aligned to that? Will we build the trust in the field with the customer based on that? Is our sales motion,
Yeah.
hey, let's come in and do a little strategic engagement for free, or let's start off with a POC, or whatever it is we do to kind of get to our end state needs to be mapped out very carefully, and it has to be reflected in how you approach the client in the first place, right? So that's, I think, a missing piece where you see a lot of growth targets because they think they're going to use the old model, the old people, maybe hire a couple new ones, but they haven't really revisited what's it going to take to get to that next tier. And all professional services firms kind of grow in quantum bumps, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of become up to $100 million firm in one situation, but then to get to $1 billion firm, it's a whole different thing. And then multi-billion-dollar firm, it's a whole different thing. And then a global and all the other things you add onto
Correct.
it. So everything
Correct.
needs to align. And that's, I think, where a lot of folks just are set up to not hit their goal, basically, unless they just get fortunate with a very hot economy. Um,
So,
so
so
yeah.
just now you said the again it struck to me the right to win. Can you unpack that a little bit? Like what does it mean for a sales process in terms of the toolings, right? The CRM, the CPQ, and whatever
Yeah,
the
I
AI goes
mean,
into.
right to win is about knowing your marketplace, knowing your competition, knowing what clients need, what's the value that they're after, and then making sure that you have that covered completely. And in a lot of cases, it's it can be like I said, your pricing method. You may need a value-based, outcome-based
Yeah.
approach where you invest in the client and you can back it up with the skills, back it up with the services, back it up with the tool set, so you can demonstrate with 100% confidence, Mr. Klein, we've done this 20 times in your industry, and we're willing to take a risk position on it. And here's all the building blocks and tools we're going to need at our disposal to achieve that result for you.
Correct.
Um, and then making sure that that is the right outcome the client wants. Make sure you're
Right.
not chasing a rabbit down a hole, but you're
Yeah.
actually hitting something that matters to that client. So your ability to confidently show up to the client even with the right price in mind already. You know, we'll invest this much, you're going to invest this much, and then we share on the upside. Both executives look at you and say, okay, you're a business person. And it doesn't have to be business value. It could be a very technical oriented thing, right? Where you come in and say, no, listen, we've beat this thing to death. We've got a lab, we've got multiple labs. We cross check our math. and demonstrate that to them to say, no, we're so confident that this is going to achieve whatever performance goals or security goals or whatever it is your value
I agree. I
proposition
agree.
is wrapped around. And you know exactly what it's worth and how much you charge for it. And you stick to it, stick to your guns,
Hmm.
with that level of confidence. Then
Interesting.
you have a right to win. And of
And
course you have to know your competition, somebody else giving the business away because they want market
I
share,
agree.
and you're always going to just be finishing second in the roster. You got to be sensitive to that. And you don't necessarily cave. You just go to the client and let them know, we know that this is happening. Is that really good for you? Is that really what you want? So it's that awareness. It's that market awareness. A lot of firms are investing in that market research pillar within their firms to know exactly what's going on in the market so that they can bring
Right.
that to the client in advance, not as a defense mechanism at the end, but here's
No, no,
what
I agree.
here's
I
what the
agree.
competition's going to do. Trust me, I know.
Correct, 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 correct. No, no, it's better to know, I really like that term right to win, right? Because, I think, once you get with that mentality of right to win, you start winning more business rather than play to win, right? Play to win is like, okay, you're hoping that you will win, but again, right to win is a
Yeah,
much more
most
defined.
successful pricers are good because they're confident,
Yeah,
and no, and most people need the support around them to be that confident, right? Most
exactly,
people aren't just
exactly.
naturally going to say, "Watch me just negotiate this thing with no substance behind it." Um, and so if you're very clear, confident, and secure in your positioning, clients pick up on that and they will say, okay, I trust this guy, right? It's like dealing with a car dealer who knows their inventory, they know the marketplace, they know what the cars, are worth in the marketplace. They understand all the metrics around it and they just give it to you straight. You're like, okay, I can trust this guy.
So, Paul, again, before we open it up for questions, we've covered a lot of topics right now. But again, people listening on the call and people who will be catching up on this later, I think sometimes this is a maze, right? So, where do you start? Wh- What's the first activity you do? What's the second activity you do? Right?
Yeah.
Given your background and experience, can you give them a guidebook to where to get started?
Yeah, I would always look to start with the fundamentals,
Okay.
and start that process because some of these fundamentals can take a long time. And but the sooner you start, the sooner the sooner you go. And that's really kind of starting with an audit of that three-way match. Just,
Yeah.
facing reality of where are you, how trustworthy and how aligned are we across our sales process, our project delivery and billing, all the way to the financial management. I mean, you just got to know where you are on that path. How trustworthy is the data? And then start coming up with a plan to say, okay, well, here's when and how we're going to approach that. Number two, I would immediately, as best you can with the data you have and the trustworthiness of your data, do like a quadrant analysis on your margin and pricing. Quadrant analysis meaning, basically it's margin performance for peer services, where you would compare client against client, uh, sales group within sales group, business unit for business unit. So when we sell this SAP, whatever, or when we do a digital strategy, or when we do whatever project we're doing, let's do some peer analysis to say what does good look like, the top
Correct.
quadrant,
Correct.
what's me and where are we chronically underperforming, either as individual sales teams or as clients? Just then you've got to make decisions around that. Are you willing to start to retire some of those clients that aren't performing and free up your resources for other things, or maybe you're not in a position to do that based on your pipeline. Um, but that's a very important thing to do. In parallel to that, you also need to do win-loss analysis, and you really need to get the story behind it. It's not just we're winning at this percent for this service area or this business unit or region or however the model, all those dimensions actually. You really need to kind of understand what's driving our wins and what's driving our losses and try to isolate, what we've done in the past. We've done like a waterfall analysis to say what is influencing pricing and then which ones are we winning or losing, because there's a number of different things other than the final price. It's volume, it's mix, there's a number of different inputs that can shift, the margin that then that opportunity or that account may have. So, looking at that is very important. Then to me, then I would go into making sure your brand strategy, your go-to-market strategy, and choosing the accounts you think are meaningful, letting go of the accounts that are not, kind of do that segmentation analysis and make sure there's a laser focus on where you're spending your time. Because,
Correct.
time is the greatest commodity,
Absolutely.
it's frustrating for sales folks to be chasing an account and an opportunity for 6 months, 9 months, sometimes over a year, only
Yep.
to just have it kind of, it's never been qualified properly. The client
Right.
wasn't aligned. You didn't read the cards
Yeah.
very well. And then even that account isn't, maybe they're not financially sound, whatever. So you need to really, really tighten up where you're going to, spend your time. Then back to the three-way match, I would redo your service taxonomy. Is this really what we want to sell? What's our catalog look like? And what are the attributes for each of the sub-levels of it? So that then you're set up to feed your proposal process and your billing and your downstream systems with consistent data that reflects, what it is you're going to the market. And then the last thing I would suggest, well, maybe two last things. One is the governance. Review your governance model, and includes where we're spending our times, how we're qualifying opportunities, when do we decide which opportunities to chase, which ones we
Correct.
don't. Are we investing enough time and resources into those pursuits? And then obviously pricing approvals and making sure
Yep.
that that whole work stream is based on some clear business rule that everybody can buy into. And then
Right.
like the last one is celebrate the wins. I mean, this is what people, when you identify, this is what good looks like. This is how we do it. Now you got to really, really promote, celebrate, throw parties, do webinars, create playbooks, really celebrate that. Give those people
Yep. Yep.
recognition for the fact that they're doing things right and even little things right. We improve the margin on this account by 2% because
Yep.
we
Yep.
aggressively went in and changed the mix, or
Right.
we went in aggressively told, no, we're not living under that MSA rate card anymore. Well, so there's a lot of different levers that can make a little bit of a difference. And I tell you, for most firms they say pricing transformations can typically improve both top line revenue because it's higher revenue, but also that straight margin by 2 to 7%. And
Yep.
so if
No,
you're a
no.
decent sized firm, that's pretty
No, no, I
meaningful.
agree with you. I think we have seen it with our clients where just putting that taxonomy in place, getting a clear set of what services to sell, and then just the compliance of just tracking everything, tracking approvals, tracking or putting those compliance in place actually starts increasing their margins and even top line very, very smoothly. And we have seen that across
Yeah.
customers. We have multiple
And
customers.
it can improve some efficiency, although I've always put the brakes on anybody selling a CPQ solution as we're doing this for the sake of
No.
speed and efficiency, because a lot of folks will say, well, no, I'm pretty fast now. This looks like it's going to be an
Yeah,
incremental administrative
yeah, yeah,
burden. The
yeah.
counter to that, by the way, is to say, you're already doing it, right? You are coming up with a price, whether it's on the back of a napkin
Yeah,
or a massive
absolutely. That's right.
spreadsheet with a zillion macros in it. You are doing the work. You're just not capturing the outcomes, the
Correct.
outputs, or the data elements. So we're just
And
going to move that to the system. You're going to have templates. You're going to have all of the attributes already there. You're just
yep,
clicking. I mean, you're literally so if you adopt it, it can be somewhat more efficient, although you're learning a new tool, right?
exactly.
That's all it
Exactly.
really is. And you are being rewarded by the data that comes back to you in that
And,
optimization and
and
other recommendations that are available.
the data is the most important piece because I think that data capture, I think the data, to your point, the data is there in every organization. It's just that it is in silos today. It is somebody's laptop, somebody's shared drive, somebody's Google Drive, somewhere some. Now, once you start putting it
And
on
it's not normalized. See, so
it's
even
not
if you
normal.
were to, some
Yeah.
people say, well, why don't we just dump all of our proposals and spreadsheets and statements of work into AI and let it kind of sort through it? It's like, well, yeah, go ahead. That's not bad. Um, However, since the data elements aren't normalized, you're going to spend an awful lot of time trying to do, mappings and so on, and uh, you'll find
Yep.
some frustration there.
Completely. Okay, so I think let's open it up for questions. We do have some offline questions which have come. So if there are people on the call, if they have questions, please feel free to put it in our chat bot. Otherwise, I have a question which had come offline and I can take that. Okay, while we are waiting for people to think of their questions, uh, just a question which had come earlier. How do you actually get buy-in from the field without killing speed, right? Because you talked about efficiency and speed, right? And I think some people are worried, like, hey, now we are going to put these tools and put these governance in place. Is it going to stop my flexibility of being fast? Because to your point, earlier point, we are already fast, right? So organizations start getting worried that is there bureaucracy which is going to get involved, or is this really for the good of the organization?
Yeah, no, that's a that's a great question. Um, and that is something to seriously look at.
Yeah,
I mean, the default position for the field will be, oh, brother, here's another requirement, another system. You know, you got to kind of look at to say, are we even using our CRM system today, right? So there's some basic things to look at to say how is our field using the systems we have today? What kind of workarounds are they doing? You got to poll the folks. You got to see what's slowing down your sales cycles. How long do certain things take? And ultimately, it is kind of a sales job that the leadership is going to have to say, guys, we're moving into the 21st century here, guys. Tell me what industry out there, tell me some aerospace of engineering firm that works off of individualized spreadsheets.
yeah,
What pharmaceutical company is doing trials without tracking, everything, right? So the world has moved to that level of maturity,
yeah,
the overall sales process, and you can tell stories about that day and night. And so you need to just say our industry is we're there. We are at that inflection point, and the winners are going to move ahead. Then the real sale, the ultimate is show them what a pricing optimization uh, data, quality data in, pricing optimization recommendations out, win-loss levers to say, okay, how am I going to win this deal? Plus, all of the organization of all the assets and information that kind of feed into your sales effort. Think of all the emails and the running around trying to find the latest version of some tool, wasting time finding out you're two versions behind, or there's a broken formula in one of the tools, that you didn't catch. So kind of fixing some of the day-to-day headaches. So that's the payoff for buying into the system. And yes, it is. It's everything you're doing today. We're just going to capture it and feed it back to you. And you get the benefit of everybody else doing it. So
yeah,
you're not on an island. You and your little tribe of your little sales team, your, management and your practices, you now are going to tap into the a broader enterprise
yeah.
pool to help you be as smart as you want to be. And at the end of the day, it's still your client, it's still your P&L
Absolutely.
decision. You guys do what you want to do. We just want you to be informed.
Yep. No, no,
We use the
fantastic.
phrase informed and intentional, right? Be informed, and then that way you can be intentional with your decisions. But if you're
Yeah,
not informed, you're guessing,
you're guessing. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you win, lose, and you don't know
I
why.
agree. I think how do you remove the guesswork is really the biggest, how should I say, learning out of this whole, I think transformation that you have got to do. Great. I guess we don't have any questions from the crowd, but I think we covered a lot of topic, and uh, it was fantastic having you on the call with me, Paul.
Yeah,
It's again, we go back a few years now, and it's been always been fascinating when I discuss this topic. And as you know, you and I can keep going on and on for another hour or two. But again, I think I want to be cognizant about everybody's time. But thanks for everybody who joined. Uh, and again, we will send out a link of this video to you guys and look forward to your comments or offline questions also. Paul, any last words from you?
yeah. Again, thank you very much, everybody. Like Stalin said, if there's any questions, send them over. I'm available to chime in if you want to have a sidebar conversation or just have a quick question. I'd love to hear more.
Fantastic. And Paul, best of luck to your Bulls and Bears for this year.
Well, the Bulls just lost their coach
Yeah, I
today,
saw that.
so it's a
I
it's
saw
a
that.
redo. But Bears were hoping for a pretty good year.
Take care.
All right, thanks,
Bye
everyone.
bye. Bye.
Bye now.